This is a May Luna Media production. You're listening to Love, Light, and Black Holes. I'm your host, Morgan Garza, here to remind you of your disco ball soul so you can dance with your darkness. If you're sick of love and light spirituality like I was, you're in the right place. We keep it real, go deep, and give voice to your shadow so your light shines even brighter. Enter the void. Welcome back, Shame Slayers and Shadow Sparklers. We are diving deep today with a listener request from last year, and I understood the assignment. So this is the parts of you you wish never happened. This is one of those episodes where I want you to get comfortable, but not too comfortable, because today we're talking about the shadow everyone wants to pretend that they don't have. We're not talking about playing small. We're not talking about hiding your brilliance. We're not talking about the tender little wounds that make us feel relatable and safe and spiritually palatable. We're talking about the parts of yourself you secretly wish never existed. Because this is where the real work happens. The parts you would delete from your timeline if you could, the parts you don't want integrated, you want them gone. So much of what I talk about in shadow work is loving every part of yourself, is seeing yourself as a disco ball soul and understanding that every single facet is needed to have this dope party, right? But what if these pieces of you don't want to have a party? What if they don't want to be seen at all? They don't want to be reflected into the room of your life at all. The moments where you weren't just hurt, maybe you were the one who hurt. You inflicted the harm. The moments where you weren't just unconscious in your actions, you were cruel or dismissive or superior or avoidant or selfish or emotionally unavailable or sharp with your words or silent when someone needed you to speak. The moments where you didn't just abandon yourself, you abandoned someone else. This is the shadow work almost no one wants to touch because it isn't about reclaiming power. It's about confronting responsibility, and that's a very different initiation. Here's the thing most people don't want to admit. It's much easier to meet the shadow where we were victims than it is to meet the shadow where we had agency. It's easier to grieve what was done to us, what we did to ourselves, than to look honestly at what we've done or allowed or avoided with others. It's easier to say I was wounded than I wounded. I didn't know better than I knew, and I still chose comfort, safety, approval, control, or previous programming. And when we don't want to see those parts and we don't integrate them, we bury them, and they become zombies in our lives. And this is not what I want for you, but this is such an important topic, and I love that this was requested because, I love to go deep. I'm going to keep it real. Though we've all done something to hurt someone else. We have all done something that has hurt groups of people, if we're being really honest. And let's widen this out, because cruelty and prejudice are only one doorway into this conversation. There are so many selves we try to exile. The version of you who stayed in a relationship too long and slowly eroded someone else's trust. The version of you who shut down emotionally and called it independence. The version of you who weaponized spirituality to avoid accountability. The version of you who used silence as punishment. The version of you who rejected love, not because it wasn't real, but because it terrified you. You get where this is going. This version of you who hurt yourself with food or substances, with overwork, with neglect, doesn't want to admit that some part of you chose that too. But that is easier to admit that you did this to yourself than the harm that you inflicted on others. And these are the shadows we want to pretend didn't happen because they carry the most guilt, the most shame. They are so heavy and hard to actually admit, to say out loud. But this is really where the true freedom comes. And all I see on everyone who is doing shadow work is focusing on the self, on the inner child, on the ways that we abandoned, on the ways that we've lied to ourselves, on the ways that we've kept ourselves small, dimmed our light, hid our power, right? Yes, of course, that is important. And those are very deeply ingrained shadows. But so are the shadows that you want to pretend never happened because you know you hurt someone. You know that you did something to harm someone else, and taking responsibility for that feels so heavy because you have to admit not only to yourself that you did it, but that it actually did inflict the pain that you are pretty sure it did on that other person. And I'm betting they told you. But maybe you say, that was the old me. I've healed that. I'm not that person anymore. And maybe you aren't. And I absolutely believe people can change. My husband is about to be 2 years sober in just a few weeks. And I am so incredibly proud of him. And I've watched this whole journey of him pulling himself by his bootstraps out of rock bottom. And I have watched change. I've watched myself change through this journey of sobriety with him and through life in general and through losing my dad, of course, right? But maybe you aren't that person because the person that did that was acting from the wounds that maybe now you've healed, the wounds that were inflicted on you that made you hurt other people. You know that saying, hurt people hurt people. But I want to offer healed people heal people. And that doesn't mean that you have to go around and make amends to people that you've hurt. And maybe it does. And maybe you want to do that. And maybe that feels really good. And you know that this is going to help. But maybe this is just groups of people. And maybe you have been racist or subjective or held biases against people or whatever it may be. This is just a moment for you to recognize that the shadow doesn't only pertain to self, it pertains to others as well. And that shame can actually be harder to carry than the shame of the knowledge and understanding and awareness of what we've done to ourselves. And here's the uncomfortable truth that I will say to you with so much care because I say it to myself. Anything you refuse to look at honestly does not dissolve. It leaks. It leaks into your tone, your reactions, your blind spot, your projections, your righteousness, your shame spirals, your sudden overreactions that feel bigger than the moment. Everything you avoid or pretend doesn't exist will come out one way or another. This is why I'm so obsessed with shadow work, because I have seen what avoiding it does. I have done it to myself, and I have seen so many other people in my life, in my industry, and all around me that avoid something that is so dark, so heavy, so painful, so shameful, and it ends up affecting their entire lives. Unconsciously, of course, subconsciously, they're not going out and saying, well, this happened to me, so I'm doing that to you. They just do it. That kid who was a bully in school was probably being bullied or mistreated or neglected at home. And so that anger comes out. And that's just one example. But the unintegrated shadow doesn't make you evil. It just makes you unconscious. And what I am on a mission to do is bring all of this into the light so that you can see it, so that you can be conscious of it, so you can be aware of it. Because unconsciousness is where the harm happens. It's quiet. It doesn't always show itself blatantly, but there will be signs. And your relationships will reflect what you are hiding within yourself. Whether that's with good intentions or not, it will happen. So this is what I want to dive into, because the instinct when we see these parts in disgust, we think, how could I have been that person? I don't want that inside me. If I acknowledge this, what does that say about who I am? And that is so valid. If you acknowledge and accept and take responsibility for something fucked up that you did to someone else, what does that say about you in that moment? Can you go back and say, okay, this is what I did, and these are the things that I was feeling around that time in this scenario that could have attributed and given fuel to that fire, whether I knew it at the time or not. Because that's exactly why these parts stay frozen. We don't want to look at them. We don't want to admit it, because that question of, if I acknowledge this, what does that say about who I am, is so confronting. It makes us so raw, so vulnerable, filled with so much pain and guilt and shame that it is actually painful to even remember what it was that we did. And then to forgive ourselves. We think that we don't deserve to be forgiven by ourselves. We think that we don't deserve our own forgiveness, our own grace, because what we did hurt someone. And if we acknowledge that and we forgive ourselves, does that make it right? Does that make it okay? Does that absolve us? No, of course it doesn't make it right. Of course it doesn't make okay. And you're not going to be absolved. Acceptance is absolution, but it never goes away. The fact that you did something to harm someone else, and I am right there with you. I'm not saying this from my mountaintop, from my pedestal of being perfect. I have hurt other people. And I have to take responsibility for that too. But this darkness is consuming if you don't look at it. Because if you are not met with truth and compassion at the same time, you are never going to get beyond the shame that is crushing you and keeping you away from truly living. And this is the whole point of shadow work, to look at the darkness so that the light shines brighter. Love, light, and black holes. They coexist. They are in harmony with each other. They are dependent upon each other. But here's the reframe that changes everything. The shadow traits we're most ashamed of are rarely evil at their core. They're distorted expressions of something neutral. Cruelty is often projection. Superiority is often safety. Judgment is often discernment. Avoidance is often self-preservation. And prejudice can be pattern recognition taught before consent. I'm talking about your parents, your family, the people that you surrounded yourself with or that were just naturally around you when you were little, put prejudices and biases in your brain. We are not born racist. We are not born against anyone else. We are taught to be. And if you grew up in an area or you grew up in a family where you were taught to be something that you naturally aren't, that is going to be ingrained in you. So we talk so much about rewiring the brain, right? So much of shadow work is neuroscience. It's neuroplasticity. It's creating new connections. But what about undoing connections? What about unplugging something from something else that we don't want to give energy towards anymore? Because that is also something to consider and think about. This unwiring at the simultaneous time of rewiring and making a new connection. But that new connection cannot be made unless there is a disconnection first. And that is what I'm offering you. Because the energy underneath all of this isn't the problem. The lack of integration is. And when an energy is never integrated, it doesn't mature. It stays young, reactive, primitive. It's a dick, right? And that's why it surprises you when you show up. Or when it shows up in your life, because you have changed. You aren't that person anymore. You have grown, you've matured, you've seen other things, you've formed different perspectives, you have expanded your horizons, you have a totally different idea of what life is, of how to treat people, of the lesson that you learned by hurting someone and feeling that profound shame and guilt. But that's why it surprises you when it shows up, because it is like getting hit by left field by your unhealed younger self. And whether that's younger by a year or younger by 15 or 20, it doesn't matter. It is going to be shocking nonetheless. And this is where people get nervous and think, I'm saying something I'm not. So let me be very clear. Integration is not approval. Integration is not justification. Integration is not, it's okay that I did that. Integration is the ability to say, I can see this in me. I don't act from it anymore. And I'm not pretending it doesn't exist. I honor that this happened. I honor that I did this. And I am accepting that I inflicted harm. And now that I know better, I'll do better. And that is literally all we can do, unless you really do want to go on an amends tour, which is great. Making amends with people can be truly the path to liberation for yourself. And whether they've thought about it a lot and they're like, oh my gosh, thank you, I've been waiting decades for this. Or they're like, oh wow, I never gave that another thought. I don't even think about it anymore. And it, like, at the time was a big deal, but it hasn't affected me, and maybe this is affecting you. So however you go about this, it is totally up to you. I'm not saying you need to go make amends, but I'm just saying it is an option if this is really something that is weighing on you in that way. Or Be honest with yourself, because that's where you get the choice. The choice to not repeat, the choice to do different, the choice to recognize that in yourself and say, whoo, that was fucked up. I never want to do that to someone again. I never want to feel that way again. I never want to inflict pain on someone else, which then just ricochets right back to me. So rather than pretend it didn't happen and let it unconsciously and subconsciously run your life, find relief in this. Because there is a strange kind of relief that comes when you stop trying to be spotless, when you stop trying to be perfect, when you're like, oh yes, I abandoned myself and I hide my power and I blah, 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 blah. I always choose the wrong partner and I always choose a job that doesn't appreciate my skills. And like, those are self-victim situations. When you stop needing your narrative to be clean, when you let yourself say, I've been both loving and harmful, I've been both conscious and unconscious, I've been both brave and cowardly, I've been both awake and asleep, I've been a dick and a fairy queen lover, whatever. This is not a failure of shadow work. That is shadow work. And the difference between performative healing and embodied integrity is profound. Performative healing is, yeah, I'm doing shadow work and I'm going through everything that other people ever did to me and everything that my parents did when I was growing up and all of the things that happened to me when I was in college or coming into age and what all the things that I did to myself and the ways that I kept myself away from my power and whatever. That's performative healing. Embodied integrity is saying that, all of that, and these are all the ways that I hurt other people. These are all the ways that I was out of integrity. These are all of the ways that I was not my best self towards others and I inflicted harm. Because if you're only doing the one side of shadow work where you only look at yourself and you're only here for the glow up, you're not going to get what you want. It might be just for a little bit. It might work for a little while. And this is exactly how I talk about manifestation without shadow work. It might work at first, but it is not a long-term plan. It is not sustainable. It is not something that is going to actually get you to where you want to be so that you can live the life that you want to live and have the relationships that you want to have and have the beautiful career that you love doing and live in the beautiful house and all of the things. All of that will not happen unless you are fully embodied and in integrity in your shadows, in acknowledging the fucked up shit that you've done. Not just everything that's been done to you. Because that is such a focus of shadow work. I'm healing my inner child because these are all of the ways that other people hurt me. I'm healing all of the pain that I've experienced because these are all the things that other people did that made me small. It's not taking responsibility. I don't want to be pure. The people who scare me are the people who only focus on being a victim, not the ones who take responsibility for what they've done too. The ones who can say, I've done the worst, I've seen the worst in myself, and I take responsibility for who I am. That's who I want sitting at my table, because that's power, that's maturity, that's the kind of person who doesn't need to project or dominate or deny. The people who scare the shit out of me are the ones who are way too happy, who pretend like everything is fine. I'm not against happy people, but you know those people, they're fucking creepy. They're only happy. They don't ever have a bad day. They're always smiling. Everything is always fine. They're chipper and everything's wonderful and they're walking on the sunny side of the street and this is just a wonderful life and they're not acknowledging anything, right? I'm happy. I love walking on the sunny side of the street. I am an eternal, natural optimist. I see a silver lining in everything. Love, light, and black holes. Like, this is the perfect example of that. But the person who is hiding from themselves, who is always the victim, those people scare the shit out of me. Because there is so much inside of them fighting to come out and they are suppressing it to the point of spontaneous combustion. Side note, if you grew up in the 90s, do you remember the fear, the primal fear we had of spontaneous combustion? Like, where did that come from? I feel like we watched some weird Dateline story. I feel like I have this memory of it, and it was like some guy was smoking a cigarette on his recliner chair and fell asleep and he spontaneously combusted, like he was burned from the inside out, and we were like, that can happen, like holy shit. Anyways, sidebar. I want to hang with the people who are like, yeah, I've done fucked up shit in my life and I'm not proud of it, but I own it. Because nothing inside of them is fighting to stay hidden. They're out. They're like, I wear my heart and my darkness on my sleeve and this is who I am and it's not going to run my life and it's not going to be what I lead with, but it is also not a secret. Because if it is a secret, then I am also hiding from myself. So if you're listening to this and something in you feels tight, if a memory just surfaced that you don't like, if there's a version of you you've been trying to spiritually outgrow instead of face, I want you to hear this. Seeing it doesn't make you bad. It makes you honest. And honesty is the beginning of freedom, not shame. Shadow work isn't about becoming light. It's about becoming whole. Love, light, and black holes. The full disco ball soul. We don't want half a disco ball with cracked out pieces laying on the floor. Broken here, broken there, the lights flickering. It's just like a spooky vibe. This makes you honest. This wholeness is the chapters you wish you could tear out. Not to relive them, not to glorify them, but to finally let them rest. Integrated, witnessed, and no longer running the show, because I guarantee you those parts of yourself that you're avoiding, that shame is the shadow of all your desires. If you haven't heard me say this yet, shame is the shadow of desire. I want to get billboards of this and put them around every city because this is huge and this is a really important part of shadow work. Shame is the shadow of desire. What you want is on the other side of addressing your shame. And this kind of shame, of inflicting harm on others, is running the show. It's created programming and algorithms inside of your mind that you don't even know about. It's like the dark web of the soul. There are not the soul. The soul is light. It's the dark web of the ego. And this is such a scary place to think about going. What am I going to find? It's going to be all fucked up shit. It's going to be really scary and I'm going to get lost. I'm never going to come out and I'm going to contract some weird disease and have a, illness, and not an illness. What is it called? A virus on my computer and everything's going to shut down. And that might happen at first. But then you can get some malware, you can clean stuff up, you can say, okay, opening this can of worms put me down a rabbit hole. And that's the feeling of being tight. That's the feeling of thinking, this is really uncomfortable. And I don't feel like being here. And I don't want to acknowledge this part of myself. But when you do, that's where the real transformation happens. And that's where you're like, I am doing shadow work. No doubt about it. I am not only talking about the things that people did to me. I am not only talking about the things that I did to myself. I am talking about how I hurt other people. The ways that I inflicted harm. The ways that I became someone that I don't want to be anymore. Because the ugliest impulses are just distorted expressions of something neutral underneath. And that is from the request that I got by email by a listener. She said, what I am learning is that even the ugliest impulses are just distorted expressions of something neutral underneath. This is the part of shadow work that almost no one talks about. It is easier to talk about reclaiming confidence or creativity. It is much harder to talk about recognizing your own capacity for cruelty, prejudice, contempt, or superiority. And yet that is the work that actually frees people. Until someone is willing to look straight in the part that they are horrified by, that part will keep leaking out sideways. So thank you for sending in this request, this beautiful listener of mine, because this was such a wonderful, I say conversation, I'm talking to myself, but I'm also talking to you. I can feel you tense up. I can feel you say, ooh. This was such a beautiful opportunity for me to dive into darkness that I love talking about. And this is exactly why I am writing a book on shadow work. It's not coming out until spring 2027. But stick around here and get all of the juice until then, because this is the magic that you have been looking for. It's not how to manifest better. It's not how to set intentions with the moon. It's not all of these things that you see on the surface level of TikTok and Instagram and magazine headlines. This is the real work. This is what is going to get you to those places. This is where the real transformation happens, quietly, steadily, without performance. And once you've done that, you don't have to pretend anymore. I'm so happy you're here and listening. I'm so excited to be in a whole new era of life. There's so much going on astrologically, and we're going to get into that. I said last week that this week was going to be all about winter magic, but then I remembered that I got this request last year, and I thought, what better way to kick off this new year, calendar year, with something that is so incredibly important. And something that you probably feel after coming out the season of holidays. Like maybe you were a dick here and there. Maybe you reacted in ways that didn't really feel good. Maybe you hurt someone's feelings. Maybe something happened with your family that you wish you could take back. So I'm offering this to you. Let me know how it lands. Let me know where it lands. Let me know what comes up. I am a safe space, and I really appreciate you being here with me for Love, Light, and Black Holes and the exploration of the human experience. Everything that I offer you can find down below. I am also working on something brand new that will be coming out soon that I am very excited about, that will tell you your deepest shadow. So look out for that in the coming weeks. But in the meantime, thank you, thank you, thank you. I love doing this. So this is really fun too. I know saying fun, diving into all this dark shit might be weird for some people, but this is what I get off on, y'all. I'll see you next week. Love, light, and black holes. Thanks for diving into the void with me. If today lit something up in you or cracked something open, follow the show and leave a review so we can magnetize more shame slayers and shadow sparklers into this world. Want more? Step through the portal at lovelightandblackholes.com. That's where the wild magic lives. Until next time, dance with your darkness like it's your favorite song and watch the whole universe light up.